Welcome, everybody, to Sunday morning at the Marxist Forum. And today's a special day. It's Happy Mother's Day. So, happy Mother's Day to all you mothers out there and to all of you who have mothers or had mothers, which I guess includes just about all of us. We've been meeting here every Sunday morning for over a decade and a half. And now that we're on Zoom, we should also say good afternoon. Our speaker today is in the East Coast, and people know the other time zones, so it's good evening to some of those who are in the Far East or Far West as well. These weekly programs are organized by the Institute of the Critical Study for Society, the ICSS, and this session is being recorded and will be posted on YouTube with a link to our website. And I recommend that you check our website out. It's the initials ICSS, one word, Marx, M-A-R-X, for those of you who don't know how to spell Marx, but we all do, .org. ICSmarx.org is our website. So check it out. We have announcements there. You can communicate to us through the website. You can also make donations through the website, and you can see future programs as well as recordings of past programs. My name is Roger Harris, and I'm the program on the program committee that organizes these regular weekly presentations. Sunday mornings at the Marxist Forum programs are a platform for diverse presentations of interest to the left in general. However, the program committee particularly believes in the continuing value of Marx, and most importantly, the Marxist tradition. But you don't have to be a Marxist to join us on the Sunday mornings or even to present. You can sign up for mail notifications for our future programs, past programs, and contact us again at our website, icsmarks.org. We always welcome input, feedback, suggestions for topics, and so forth. Today's program is going to address a acutely timely subject. Is U.S. war on Iran imminent? The U.S. and Israeli um, joined to the hips are actively and overtly preparing for war on Iran. From their perspective, current conditions may be favorable for an attack due to several strategic and geopolitical factors. Iran could be nearing weapons-grade uranium enrichment levels, but it does not yet have a nuclear deterrent capability. Additionally, regional instability, such as the weakening of some of Iran's allies in Iraq, Syria, Lebanon, Yemen, may reduce the risk of retaliation. Israel's recent normalizations of relations with several Arab states also provide a buffer against diplomatic backlash. Domestically, political leaders both in Washington and in Tel Aviv may view military action in a propitious way that now is the time to act. To address all these questions, plus what's happening in the broader West Asia theater, our speaker is eminently qualified. Bahman Azad is his area of research includes the political economy of capitalism and socialism. He's the author of the book Heroic Struggle, Bitter Defeat, Factors Contributing to the Dismantling of the Socialist State in the USSR. Bahman is president of the U.S. Peace Council, and welcome. I see a number of comrades from the U.S. Peace Council at this particular meeting, so welcome to you particularly. Bahman is also on the Secretariat of the World Peace Council, and he's a representative of the World Peace Council at the United Nations. He's also a member of the Administrative Committee of UNAC, the United National Anti-War Coalition, and he is affiliated with the anti-imperialist website and organization Tendency, the Iranian group called 10 Mayor Group. And he's currently serving as the coordinator for the Coalition Against U.S. Foreign Military Bases and co-coordinator for the Hands Off Syria Coalition. So with that introduction, Bahman, what is happening in the West Asia theater, and what us as organizers and activists, what should we can be concerned about?
Hello, Roger. Thank you for inviting me, and hello to everyone. I'm glad to see all of you again. It's an honor for me to be invited to speak at this prominent group. We are dealing with a very complex situation, as one of the comrades was before the start of the meeting was saying that things are changing so rapidly, it's hard to catch up and keep pace with them. And it indeed a very, very, very complex situation we are dealing with. And of course, a lot of people try to make predictions, have expectations. This will happen or that will happen. And I think we need to put all of these guesswork in a broader perspective in order to be able to make sense of the whole thing and see if we can, in a sense, make some prediction about what will happen. As usual, that whenever I spoke here, I try to be brief. And leave the most of the time for discussion because that is much more productive. And what I will try to do is to give you just a most general context to the whole situation, so that we have some understanding of what parameters are at work. And there's not a few, it's quite a number of them that are at work. And from that point of view, probably then we get to the issue of the negotiations and the impact. Let me start with the global situation. And this global situation, I'm sure all of you are better than me aware of them. We know that we are dealing with a transition to a new world order based on multipolarity and independence of nations. This process started with the rise of China at the beginning of more or less effectively at the beginning of the 21st century. And within a decade, China managed to gain enough strength to become the second largest economy of the world and exert pressures and make its presence felt by the United States and the imperialist system. Along with that, certain other things happened that really worked against imperialism. As we know, prior to this period, the NATO, after the collapse of Soviet Union, was moving toward the east and increased the number of its members from 16 in 1990, at the beginning of 1990, to 32 by now, almost doubled actually, the number of the members of organization of NATO. They moved toward the east, they started to move toward the west, and now they're working on Colombia. They did actually make Colombia a global partner of NATO, and now working on Argentina. Before Lula, there was a talk of Brazil joining NATO as a partner, global partner. So they were expanding, and there was the whole situation was based on imposition of a neoliberal globalist order with open economic doors for all nations, weaken the states, strengthening of the private sectors in all of the countries, moving away from direct investment in the developing world to giving bank loans and creating serious, huge debts for most of the nations and countries, and actually creating poverty. So this whole situation was creating enough resentment at the grassroots level of all societies, together with the rise of China and the shift in the balance of forces gradually toward first China challenging US, and now actually gradually gaining the momentum in terms of passing the United States. So the US imperialist system, the imperialist order that was established after World War II and then redefined after the collapse of the socialist camp, began to be challenged by China, but the resistance was up to a certain point passive. That is, people resisted in a more passive way. But what changed qualitatively the whole situation? It is when the balance of forces moved enough for Russia to actually try to take action and move its special forces into Ukraine to block NATO's penetration into Ukraine. And from that point on, the whole global resistance to imperialism took a more active or proactive form. This process was actually kind of came to its fruition with the rise of Palestinian resistance on October 7th, and the whole qualitative shift in terms of the way the forces of resistance dealt with the US imperialism and its allies changed. So this is the condition that we have, and the world is more or less almost certain that it's moving in that direction, and US is definitely losing its hegemony over the world situation. And that in itself is one element in the context that we are dealing with. But with that process, especially with the uprising in Palestine, there was another threat to the US domination in the world, which was a major one, which was in West Asia, in the Middle East. The Palestinian movement actually, and the subsequent events and developments that led to the involvement of Hezbollah and the Houthis and Iran direct confrontation, military confrontation with Israel, attacking, sending missiles and all that, really changed the whole situation. At the same time, the brutality of the violence against the Palestinians that the US and Israel initiated and completed with killing tens of thousands of people actually discredited first the United States as an impartial kind of democratic pro-human rights force. It also destroyed Israel's this false story that Israel is the victim, is doing self-defense and everything else. So in a sense, it broke down the whole veneer from the whole situation and moved the whole imperialist camp together with Israel in a defensive posture. The question is that the invincibility of Israel also was kind of torpedoed by Iran during this time, and by the Hezbollah and Houthi and Nusra. So they were losing Middle East. And the US knew that losing Middle East meant kind of sealing of the process of transition to a multipolar world because of the strategic and the resources of the West Asia for the US for maintaining the hegemony. So that is why they came in full force with all they had at the risk of everything, losing everything, their prestige, their credit, their moral position. They came full force to prevent this from happening. And we know the results of that, what happened to the region. Now, it is in this context, of course, they managed to overthrow Syria, the government of Bashar Assad. They managed to invade parts of Lebanon. They took over parts of Syria as the Golan Heights. So the whole situation changed, and the balance of forces within the Middle East, at least from a military point of view, kind of weakened the forces of resistance. And that was a bad blow, which to me, this is why the US is trying to deal with Iran directly and try to put an end to the resistance in West Asia. So the objective, if we put it together in terms of all the whole elements of the work, is that US, the whole globalist neoliberal order has been bankrupt. It's losing its control. The resistance has moved into a proactive phase. The balance of forces are shifting radically in favor of China and Russia. Ukraine, Russia has defeated NATO, actually, in fact. And now the only thing remaining in this process is Iran to be stopped, so that the three pillars of this process, that is China, Russia, and Iran, Iran is going to be attacked as the weakest link, I think, with regard to Russia and China. And that's what they're trying to do. And the objective, that they claim, I get to Trump administration's real objectives later. But from the ruling class point of view of the United States, it is clear that the main objective is to put a halt to the process of transition to a multipolar world and maintain the US imperialist hegemony. That's the main objective. So where Iran comes into the picture from this perspective is that the idea, although it is being discussed in terms of coming to terms in terms of nuclear issue, can never be reduced to nuclear project. That was an excuse in the beginning. JPOA was also a cover. If you remember, when Trump actually in the first term got out of the out of the nuclear deal, they put out a 12-point demand that we will come back if these demands are met. And among them was Iran's halting its support for resistance in the Middle East, dismantling of Iran's missile system. Iran should stop supporting Palestine. Iran should disarm itself, give up nuclear weapons, and everything else. So there's a 12-point demand, which to me, it's still on the table. This is the only way the United States can deal with Iran. These are the demands. And the whole pretense that it is over the nuclear issue, to me, is just a cover. They never limit it, because the role Iran is playing goes far beyond its nuclear project. And that is the issue that the US is dealing with. So they want to eliminate Iran as a main force of resistance in the Middle East, along with the axis of resistance that has been weakened. So Iran is left. They want to get rid of that. And precondition for that is fully disarm Iran. Either attack it, or bring it to its knees and to submission. So this is the two options that they're working with simultaneously. As you see, negotiations are going on, but at the same time, threats are on too. So everything is on the table according. Now, given that situation, I really want to deal with another aspect of the issue, is that the two sides that are doing the negotiation having their own problems, each side. With Trump and Trumpism, probably we should, I give you my characterization of it. You may agree or not agree. Trumpism is based on two waves of reality imposing itself. One is the total dissatisfaction and discontent of the masses of people in the United States for the 20 years, 30 years of globalist neoliberal project, militaristic project that the US has been advancing, which has led to a deindustrialization of the United States, moving of the whole industrial base of the US out of the country, and decline of the whole base of the economy. Okay. That is what Trumpism is all about in terms of, this is, to me, again, it's a rebellion, I would call it, of a segment of the industrial capital of the United States, which is more nationalistic, against this globalist, neoliberal, militarist project. And in that sense, the ruling class in the United States is right now divided over how to handle this loss of hegemony that is coming and how to regain the strength and superiority. Now, they are divided as to how to do it. I'll get to it. But on the side of Iran also is a division. And there is one side that is on the side of resistance, led by the supreme leader and the revolutionary forces inside the country. And then there is the new administration, led by Pezeshkian, which was elected in the last presidential election. So if you remember, this division, in a sense, at least at the governmental level, did not exist during Raisi, President Raisi, who was killed in a helicopter crash, which is dubious in itself. But generally, Iran is facing the same kind of division within its own ranks regarding which way to go. There are these neoliberal bourgeois forces that are behind Pezeshkian administration, they got him elected, and they want to push their ideas. They want to rejoin the West. They want to rejoin the United States. And they are using the cover of nuclear negotiations to just deal with the US as a kind of a step-by-step process to go back to the camp of the Western imperialism. Now, the question is, they are trying to say that we are going to limit the negotiations to only nuclear weapons, nuclear enrichment. I'll get to that during our discussion, of course. But there is a resistance, that the resisting segment of the leadership under the leadership of Ayatollah Khamenei, who are saying we don't trust this. They have not done this before. They haven't dealt with nuclear issue alone. And even when they signed an agreement, they dropped it. And now we cannot trust them for a second term, especially since there is a much greater issue involved, and that is the whole confrontation with China and Russia, and Iran being a part of that confrontation. So in that sense, the issue will not end by dealing with nuclear project. And the US has much far greater problems with Iran that cannot be resolved through a negotiation on nuclear issues. So each side is now in Iran pushing it in its own direction. Of course, Ayatollah Khamenei has set some red lines with regard to negotiations. As you saw probably the news today, that the Iranian foreign minister mentioned that the past negotiations did not go well because US does not understand our red lines. And I'm glad about that, but that tells you that tying a lot of hope to these negotiations in itself is kind of not a wise thing to do. So what Trump wants, this is based on the actual bankruptcy of the globalist project. And Trump wants to find an alternative way of dealing with restoring United States dominance and supremacy. He thinks he can do it by doing America first, as opposed to global finance capital first. So bring in a nationalist element to it and go it alone. But the other part of the ruling class in the United States is well aware that this supremacy and dominance has been guaranteed only through militarism and through globalization, globalism. If you want to withdraw from that scene, you're going to be the loser at the end, because you cannot create a situation in which the power is shared more or less in a balanced way among major powers at the time that one is growing and expanding and the other one is diminishing and weakening. They know that this is ultimately would end in US loss of the hegemony and loss of the world domination. So to wrap it up, I think I spoke too long. The issue today is, what will the US be satisfied with and what Iran will be able to concede. The red lines, as it has been said, is that Iran wants to maintain its enrichment process. But that in itself, to me, is not a guarantee either, because the enrichment of 60% uranium to 60% and close to making a nuclear bomb, although they never wanted to make it, gives the Iran the ability to secure its own position in case United States reneges again on the process. Because US wants all this, centrifuges also shut down and taken apart and all that, and also giving away its 60% enriched uranium to a third country and limit itself to 3.67% enrichment, which in itself, the United States is even challenging that right now. That's their position, that Iran does not need enrichment at all. This, to me, is dead end. Iran will not ever accept that. But if it accepts the 3.5% enrichment and gives up the rest, in my view, it opens the door for rendering itself defenseless in the face of the global process that is going on. And that would, in a way, ensure the attack by Israel and the United States after it gives us its capability to defend itself. So now we are dealing with a dilemma, where to stand, what to do. And this is exactly where I want to open it to discussion and say, okay, this is an impossible situation, really. The United States is not giving in because it's for its own hegemony globally that cannot give in much and give up any of these demands. And Iran cannot. And if it thinks it does by this to save itself by conceding to US demands, it is opening the door to the attack, in my view. That is where we are. Thank you.
Thank you so much, Bahman. And it's amazing how much you packed into such a short presentation. It will give us a very, very robust Q&A, and we'll get to that in just a moment. But first, let me make some announcements about upcoming programs. Next Sunday, May 18th, we're going to have Anthony D'Agostino. Professor D'Agostino is a retired historian. He's taught at San Francisco State University here in the San Francisco Bay Area, and he's an expert on the Soviet Union and the Russian Revolution. But he'll be talking about globalization and nationalism and what that means today. And then following that, we don't have any completely confirmed programs, but we'll be posting them on our website as soon as we get those confirmed programs. So back to Bahman, we invite you to join the Q&A. To be called on the Q&A, please raise your hand. To do that, go to the bottom of your screen, and at the there's a logo with a heart, I think, at least on my screen it is. Hit that logo, and it'll give you the option of raising your hand. I will call people as the hands are raised, and we ask that you limit your presentation, your question or comment to 2 minutes. And if you do have a question, try to make it just one question at a time. And then we'll, if we have a second round of questions and answers, then to ask additional questions. So I'm going to start off with Raj Sahai, followed by Judith, followed by Citizen. So Raj, if you'll unmute yourself.
Thank you, Bahman, for your talk. This is a very crucial point. Iran sits in a very strategic place, and for how you termed it, it's Iran poses a threat to US domination of the world, which is already slipping. So I also don't think that the US is in a position to attack Iran because it's already entangled in war in Ukraine, and Trump's camp's position is that his base doesn't like the wars, so he'll be hurting himself if he allowed the globalists to come in. I mean, people in the power position to push him into a war. So I think he's going to try and do this economic strangling. That's his method, the maximum thing. And my question to you is, if he doesn't go to attack, and Iran cannot give up, I agree with you, cannot give up its right to enrich uranium, at least to give it a possibility to defend itself if need arises. So that's a position. Iran doesn't want to develop the weapons, but wants to have a position that should it be threatened, then it can go there. This is not going to be acceptable to the United States. So I agree with you, we're in a stalemate. So how successful can the West and basically United States be, along with Israel, to sanction it so much, given that China is a factor, it buys a lot of oil? Could you give us your analysis of that aspect? And you can react to what I'm saying, I mean, any way you like. Thank you very much for a very good presentation that I learned from.
Well, Richard, do I answer questions one by one, or?
Yes, please, because in that way it's more interactive. And so let's do it that way.
Okay. Raj, you are correct that the U.S. is in a particular bind in terms of being able to attack Iran. But the question is, would the U.S. Allow Israel, not U.S. itself? U.S. makes a deal with Iran, pulls away, and allows Israel to attack Iran. That could be, and by attack I don't mean invasion or full-fledged war. What it is attacking a couple of in a limited strike certain crucial areas, especially the infrastructure in many ways, to cripple Iran. But I would say that it is not just the military side. Israel and U.S. have quite a lot of, various operations inside the country. What I'm afraid of is that even a limited strike that could avoid being turning into a full-fledged war could be just the initiator of a process of disintegrating Iran by having their agents in various ethnic areas to rise up, the same way, Syrianization, in a sense, of Iran. That could be in the works too. So either they can win it through neoliberals inside the country politically, or win it through ethnic uprising inside the country, agitating ethnic uprising and moving Iran in the direction of an internal combustion. That's what I'm thinking about. The scenario that comes to my mind is this. Probably the attack would not be at the level that would trigger a regional war, because, as we all know, neither Russia nor China nor Iran want war. No question about it. But they can put it in an impasse and have an additional supplemental project for internal disruption to bring the government down, rather than doing it militarily. That's my feeling.
Is the internal situation so weak for the government?
Yes, we have been. There are lots of comrades who are from Iran, Iranian abroad, here, that I really invite them to join me in this to answer some of these questions. Share with me this. Yes, there is. And we see signs, and I'm sure some of our comrades can mention that. Signs in various, for example, in Balochistan, there is a talk of it. Turkey is trying to agitate in Iran and Azerbaijan. The Azerbaijan itself is trying to agitate inside the northern regions and provinces of Iran. Kurdistan is in trouble in many ways. If they want to do it, they can do it. The question is, if the Iranian government makes the necessary precautions and moves in the direction of moving toward the state of war economy and society that can protect the country from these kinds of agitations, which I think is the main concern for a lot of us inside Iran.
Very good. Thank you. And Bahman, don't hesitate to call on some comrades if you think they could add to the discussion. But the next person up is Judith Osterman, followed by Citizen, followed by Mehmet.
Hi, can you hear me?
Yes, we can. Thank you, Judith.
Okay, good. All right, so thank you, Bahman. Yeah, well, I could not understand why Iran went to the negotiating table in the first place. What is it that you can tell me? What is it that they hope to gain from the United States? The United States, I'm sure they realize the United States is even more treacherous than Israel, which is a very low bar. And they cannot expect anything that would improve their situation. I'm just guessing that they're stringing them along in order to see what develops. And what I would like to know is, can you trust Arakshi? And the other thing is the United States just sent home its planes from Diego Garcia, and everyone is saying, well, this means that they're not going to attack Iran. But my interpretation is that they realize after dealing with the Houthis, who are a minor force, that that if they left their planes in Diego Garcia, Iran would probably wipe them out, and they would they're just taking them out of harm's way. I think they do intend to use Israel as the trigger, but it looks like they're taking a pause. They want to re-strategize. So please tell me what you think. Thank you.
Yeah, lots of issues to deal with at the same time. Well, your first point that why did Iran go into negotiations? Of course, the collapse of this dismantling or the overthrow of the Syrian government had a lot of impact on that. I think that they thought that they are forced to, in a sense, buy some time to regroup and reorganize themselves, I think. So probably these negotiations have a kind of a time factor involved in it that the Iranians need to regroup and bring back their put things in order. Now the question is, would this buying time help? Also, the question is the situation inside the country, the way that neoliberals are really pressing the population down is so bad that they are banking on this pressure to bring Iranian government internally to its knees and force it to submission. Trump probably has his own view that the new liberal globalism didn't work. We have to explore other ways, and he's doing it. And I think those who know how the system works know that this process of U.S. alone will not work. And there's a division over that. But the question of why Iran is doing this is because there's a split within the leadership of Iran, of course, and of course the neoliberals, for after 30, 40 years of being in charge and having control over the whole economy and everything else, have a big say in what Iran does. But at the same time, when you ask, whether I trust Araghchi or not, I would say Araghchi is speaking on behalf of the Iranian leader, and I trust him as long as he follows his red lines and his directions. But I have no particular knowledge of the person of Araghchi to be able to say, do I trust him or not? I personally trust the position of the supreme leader of Iran and the direction that he is asking the country to go. And he himself said that, when they announced the negotiations, he first said, any negotiation with the U.S. will not solve our problems. Such a negotiation will be dishonorable, unwise, and one third characteristics that he mentioned. And he was opposed to it, actually. But when the negotiation with the force of the neoliberals in the country began, under the cover of, we're going to just talk about nuclear issue. But we know that U.S. is demanding that Iran ballistic missiles be dismantled, or their range be limited to, 1,000 kilometers or something like that. All kinds of issues. We don't know what discussions under the table are being pushed. But the whole point is that as long as the red lines are maintained by the negotiators based on what Ayatollah Khamenei said, who afterwards said, well, they have started this. I'm not optimistic. I am not pessimistic. Let's see what happens. I think it was a wise comment, while showing his dissatisfaction with the process and not having any hope in it. He did not openly block it, because any failure in that process, the blame would come to the leader if it didn't work out. So he left it to them, for them to dig their own hole and get into it. And I think this is what is happening.
Judith also asked about whether the Iranians have any illusions about the United States.
Well, I asked Comrade Farshid, Comrade Peyman, Comrade Navida. I don't know the name. I don't see the other names, if they want to get involved and answer some parts of these questions. But yes, there has been serious propaganda campaign inside Iran. And the question of the economy is so bad for the people that this propaganda that, okay, let's negotiate with the US, everything will be hunky-dory. And people do not know the details of these things, right? Now that the Iranian neoliberal bourgeoisie leader, one of the most powerful ones, said as soon as negotiations work, US is going to invest $180 billion in Iran. So you say things like that to the people, what do you expect? They tie all their hopes to these negotiations. And if it fails, which to me is very likely that it will fail, then who is responsible? The supreme leader. So they deflect the blame also on the leadership. So it's a kind of well-calculated strategy that is being pushed, in my
They actually made that offer, $180 billion.
right.
Okay, so next up is Citizen. So it's all yours. Unmute yourself, please.
Okay, timekeeper, please give me 30 seconds heads up. So, Bahman, you seem to have backed off on your position and the title of today's presentation, Imminent War on Iran. I looked up 5 years ago on YouTube when I was doing some background research on you. And my perception was that the video of you on YouTube 5 years ago said that the US was imminently going to war against Iran then. Please correct me afterwards if I'm correct. If I'm incorrect.
Did I say imminent or just war?
Well, you may have just said war. So, yeah,
Okay.
so thank you for correcting me. Where
No, I haven't. Let me explain. No, I haven't. If you look at the whole global process, US has lost it economically and politically and morally. The only way to maintain the hegemony is through military approach. And to me, it is bound to come one way or another. If not against Iran, against China. If not against China, against Russia. It will happen, in my view. It's a pessimistic view, but that's the only way out of this deadlock for the United States. Now, they may try all tricks possible, available to them. That's fine. But ultimately, the only thing that US may hope to save it is through military strength and power. It has nothing else. It has lost in all other fields already.
Okay.
So if they want to maintain that, of course, they can bring the whole world turn it into hell if they want to maintain that hegemony at that expense. But
okay, if I may go ahead and finish my question again, timekeeper, please give me a 30 seconds heads up. I want to begin by saying empires end through overextension and or miscalculation, but they don't end through knowingly sticking their heads into a lit oven. So if not you, Bahman, I looked in my email records as far back as 2006. And at the least as far back as 2006, many progressives and leftists have said almost every month from back then, this week for sure, the US will go to war against Iran.
30 seconds.
30 seconds? Does that include the time after I started talking after Bahman?
Yes, you spoke about 1 minute and 9 seconds before Bahman responded, and then I paused the time and then restarted it after you started speaking again.
Oh, okay, but no offense. I feel like my flow was directed and had my notes all worked out as to what I wanted.
Yeah, your time is again paused. So you have like right now about 26 seconds.
Okay, I feel this is...
Listen, just take your time and ask your question.
Okay,
That's fine. Thank you.
Thank you. I definitely plan on being brief. So I've already said how far back progressive and leftists have been saying that the U.S. was going to war against Iran this week for sure. You know, the U.S. said that it would not allow North Korea to develop nuclear weapons, and I'll say, how did that go? Iran is not Iraq. The U.S. and U.K. spent a decade bombing Iraq before the Anglo-American-led invasion based upon a wanton lie. Trump didn't even attack North Korea. He didn't even attack Iran when Iran launched a multi-missile attack on and destroyed several U.S. military bases in Iraq after Trump drone assassinated a chief Iranian general in Iraq. When was the last time a second world country and non-European country destroyed several U.S. military bases and causing at least a score of U.S. military casualties and leaving huge craters in the ground and completely get away with it? Israel cannot defeat Iran on its own. Israel cannot wipe out Iran's distributed and deeply underground nuclear development facilities on its own. A war against Iran would result in huge military losses, huge Western economic disruptions, and the military losses possibly including a U.S. aircraft carrier. So you can respond to that however you want. I can just put question mark at the end of it. And thank you, Roger.
Roger, can you give some time to Comrade Farshid or Kazem or Navida or Payman?
Absolutely. If they come forward. You can also call on people.
Let me just make a brief response here. Comrade, U.S. has been at war with Iran since the revolution. 8 years of Iraq invasion with the green light from United States. Iran has been under economic war since the beginning of the revolution. Sanctions are economic war. Okay, so don't think that when we say U.S. war against Iran, it's just troops and military. No, the war has been going on for 4 or 5 decades, and that has been the case. In fact, U.S. has been at war with Iran since 1953.
Okay, I must say, I'm aware of that, but most people mean a military attack, not an economic attack.
Right, that's fine. Yeah, but the war comes in different ways.
Yes, I'm completely aware of all of that. Again, most people mean a U.S. military attack with missiles, drones, whatever, not just an economic attack. We know that the U.S. is at economic war with any number of countries in the world. And by the way, no disrespect meant by my question. I just heard this for so long, and I myself just laugh whenever people talk about a U.S. military attack on Iran. Again, no disrespect, but it's been going on so long. And of course, it's not going to happen because empires do not end themselves by knowingly sticking their heads into an oven.
And that's a good question. I think we've kind of initially responded, but let's go back to this. But I'm going to call on Mehmet right now, followed by Jean and Sharon.
Thank you, Roger. Thank you, Bahram. Very good presentation. A lot of information there, and a lot of questions need to be asked. But I'll start with one question, and that is, if the BRICS, if the multipolar world is revolving around the BRICS formation, and China and Russia know that they are the next steps if this war happens, and it looks like you are sure that it will get to them too, then wouldn't, as a first step, then BRICS protection of Iran by, instead of waiting for this enrichment of this percent, that, instead of that, why don't they give nuclear weapons to Iran? Because look, as the previous questioner asked, North Korea suddenly, I don't know if they enriched it themselves or they obtained it, but when they announced that they had nuclear weapons, suddenly they were taken out of the terrorist countries list, and North Korea was kind of left alone. So why isn't this working for Iran at this point, with Russia and China giving them some nuclear weapons and cutting this whole debate short? Thank you.
Well, you have to understand that the process that is going on globally cannot be only limited or reduced. It's a strategy, its approach cannot be reduced just defending one country. They have to understand what stages they are going through, how prepared they are to confront certain adversaries, at what level they should proceed, and all that. So when Russia and China, of course, this is something I think known by everybody. China knows that the process that it has started can only be completed through peace. So it has been avoiding any kind of military confrontation or the same. Russia is doing the other way. But the point is, should the whole strategy of global transformation be reduced to defending Iran and calculations be based on that only? Or should they consider other factors that are involved? Think of it as a military, an army moving forward. Is the importance of capturing this one zone as so important that you give up the whole forward march of the military? or you have to calculate all those things, right? So I think they are thinking in broader terms, longer terms, and acting upon that. So if they act, for example, upon the Iranian situation from a military point of view, or just giving Iran bomb, they have to pay prices on other fields that they are advancing in. So they have to be careful about that, right? This is the issue. What our position, my position is at least, is that if some kind of deal is made or submission or concession is made to the United States regarding this, the immediate step needed is for Iran to sign a mutual defense treaty with Russia, or sign a nuclear protection without bringing missiles into Iran, that Russia covering Iran nuclear in a nuclear defense way. So there are lots of different ways that these things, I'm not proposing any of it, I'm saying these are the options that may not require that kind of a drastic measure. So I'm sure these countries are really thinking about all of these things, and I'm sure Iran, whatever Iran is, revolutionary leadership of Iran is doing, revolutionary part of Iranian leadership is doing, is in consultation with China and Russia. They're not doing it alone, I'm sure.
Very good. Next up is Jean. If you unmute yourself, followed by Sharon and then Paulina.
Okay, well, Bahman, thanks so much for your talk. It's a great talk. I appreciate your comments on multipolarity in China and everything that's going on. I'm wearing my Veterans for Peace cap now, and we are an organization dedicated to the abolishment of war and particularly concerned about restraining our government from intervening in the affairs of other countries. And I've checked just before coming on, I looked at our webpage, and there are, I think, dozens of resolutions we've passed specifically on Iran. So if you want, and the resistance. So I just want to call your attention to that. But I'm also struck, again, you mentioned war is not only military means, there are other means, and I'm thinking specifically the role of the CIA in all this. And it's interesting to me that the CIA got its start in 1953 with the overthrow of Mossadegh, who was a very popular leader. He was Time Magazine's Man of the Year, I think, in 1953. But he had a lot of weird ideas, like Iran should control its own oil, which British Petroleum and other people didn't like. So they basically overthrew the government there. And they've been up to these sorts of things continually since then. And I think, as I say, the past is prologue, and this is taking new forms here. But I just wanted to observe that and thank you for your comments and see if you have. I'm sure you probably have more to say on this topic. But again, thank you for being here. It's great to see you.
Thank you, Eugene. Thank you.
Okay, next up is Sharon, followed by Paulina and then Janet, please.
Thank you. I just wanted to comment on the tenor of this discussion. So I think that it's not the job of Marxists to make predictions. We don't have crystal balls. What we have is a methodology for analyzing historical events and the present situation and the contradictions around the world, which I think Bahman laid out pretty clearly. So it's not saying, we are not going to say, yes, there will be a war on a certain date, or we're quite certain that the US is going to invade or Israel is going to invade on a certain date or within a certain time frame. That's not how what this methodology teaches us. We need to be students of history and understand the present contradictions. So but we can certainly say there is a danger of war in specific. Now, there's always a danger of war as long as U.S. imperialism has any kind of hegemony. But we can say more specifically, we can say things about that there is a danger of war in certain places, and our job is to try to educate people and teach people and agitate around why the U.S. should not go to war, why Iran, the people of Iran are not our enemies, and the people of China and Russia are not our enemies, and the people of Cuba are not our enemies. And so I think it's very important to take that kind of stance, and also to understand the contradictions which Bahman touched on in the especially among the ruling class in the United States, which I don't claim to understand yet. I mean, it seems to me Trump's policy seems so counterproductive to the interests of U.S. imperialism and the interests of big capital that I don't understand why that side exists in the U.S. ruling class. And I think we need to understand it in order to go figure out what more specifically policies we're advocating.
Can I add one? I fully agree with you, Sharon, what you said. But one thing, please consider. The battle with China, economic battle with China, has turned into a battle over the high tech, right? And China has kind of put US behind in this area, or is putting US behind. That sector of US capital that is losing to China wants to regain its position, right?
Yes.
So in a sense, it is that part, that segment of the ruling bourgeoisie. That I'm saying it not because they're with Trump, but this is the area of focus, because they want to regain that, because they know their fate in the future will be determined by this battle. So the question is, Trump wants to bring back that technology to the United States, right?
Not car production, but
not production, but control.
right.
And that they cannot bring that. And the whole idea that we want to reindustrialize the United States, bring the capital industry back, that's pipe dream. That's nonsense, right? It's not just bringing back the money. You have to bring in the know-how. You have to bring in the markets. You have to all kinds of things that China has taken already. You cannot take it away except by force, right? So he is pipe dreaming, but the question is, the U.S. imperialism is so desperate that it's hanging to anything possible. Okay? They don't trust their own allies to share this high tech with them anymore. We want to keep it to ourselves now.
Including Israel.
Including Israel, right? So this America First has a lot of such meanings involved in it. It's not just political. In the economic battle, you have to look at it. What does it mean? And it's in the interest of certain segment of the U.S. bourgeoisie to do that.
Yes. Thank you.
Thank you.
Okay, next up is Janet Corbin, followed by Richard Wright.
Polina?
Oh, did I skip Polina?
Skip Polina.
I'm terribly sorry. Polina Vasiliev is next up. Comrade Polina, my apologies.
Thank you. No problem. Hi, Bahman. Good to see you again.
See you again.
I want to go back to the internal situation in Iran, and you may have already answered this question, but maybe I'm just still trying to be hopeful. So are you saying that should the government come under even further attack, are you saying that the revolutionary component of the government would not be able to mobilize the young people en masse to defend the Islamic Revolution?
I am not saying it can or cannot. I'm saying that the question is very up in the air so far as the population is concerned. The US propaganda, Western media, Western culture has been, they have bombarded this generation of Iranians so badly that they don't know how they would respond to this situation. The question is, Iranians showed during Iraq War, nationalist tendency is very strong in Iran. And that could overcome some of the pro-West tendencies if some problem arises like that. But I'm not saying they can do it or not. But one thing I'm sure of is that the bottom half or part, or maybe you have a majority of the population of Iran is supporting the revolution. It's very class divided in terms of who supports and who is opposed. You can see this class division you saw it even in the last election. So the upper middle class, I don't know, they're very noisy. They have all the media, they have the social media, they have everything else. Make a lot of noise and influence a lot of minds. But ultimately, if you look at, for example, the workers' strikes, or one of the first things they do in their strikes is that we don't want to contribute to the efforts of the enemy. We are here just for our rights here. They make a line, they draw a line and say, okay, we are on the side of the people, on the side of revolution. So I think much of the noise that is coming against the Iranian government is coming from upper classes.
Yeah.
But the bottom part, although they're suffering a lot due to economic conditions, they still, I think, are staying with the revolution. And I'm hoping, crossing my finger, that they come into the scene and save us, because we need them.
Can I add to that, please, if the convener...
Definitely. Go ahead, please.
Yeah.
I'm asking for it.
Thank you. The answer is yes. Iran community is very society is very divided, but when it comes to the defending Islamic revolution of the 1979, Ayatollah Khamenei, the supreme leader, has a huge social capital. I promise you that. When supreme leader asks for his people to come to the street, they come in tens of millions. We saw that in the Friday prayer to commemorate the martyrdom of Sayyid Nasrallah, the commander of Hezbollah forces. From the suburbs, the poor suburbs of Tehran and lower middle class suburbs of Tehran, they started to deluge the street from 1 o'clock in the morning. They totally congested the metro. The metro couldn't run because of the number of people coming to the Friday prayer to respect martyrdom of Hassan Nasrallah. It was about 10 million. This show of force could not be noticed by the going administration of Mr. Biden. And I remember Sullivan, as his last ceremony, his last speech, said, oh, unfortunately, there is lots of people in Iran who are very conservative. Means who gonna defend the revolution and the supreme leader. hands and teeth. That's the end of a story. And that's why so far, after 46 years, 3 times a day, Israel and every American administration, from Democrats to the other one, uh, threatening Iran in the morning, in lunchtime, and in the afternoon, that we're gonna beat the shit out of you, and they never dare to. They know they have to grow some balls first before they touching Iran. And no, it's 46 years, I think, is enough. And now the imperialism is on last feet, and they know it. They don't come to negotiation table. They just attack and kill people. We saw that after the Second World War. For 70 years, we saw that, how they bombed Vietnamese, Iraqis, Afghanistan, Somalia, Cambodia. They just shoot and ask the question next. So we know the nature of imperialism, how savage they are. They don't come civilizedly to sit on a negotiation table if they know they can win a war. So be sure and make no mistakes. Iran's masses are behind Supreme Leader, 100%. Thank you.
Thank you very much. Janet, it's all yours now.
Thank you, Bahman, for joining us today. I'd like to start by making what I believe is a correction to something you said early on. Initially, Russia's moving in its forces into Ukraine in February 2022 was to protect the Russian ethnics in the Donbass who had been fighting for 8 years against the Maidan coup, which it had not recognized. Russia's pushing back at NATO came later. Okay, back to Iran. In one of 2 podcasts I watched yesterday, I think it was, either Sayed Morandi and Alastair Crook in conversation with Glenn Deason, or Kevork Almassian and Tariq Cyril Amar in conversation with Karim Batach, are predicting another scenario. Back some months ago, Israel's so-called retaliation against Iran's attack on Israel, which was actually a retaliation on Israel, involved U.S. weapons, and the U.S. was actually behind it. They talked about Netanyahu wanting the Libyan model for Iran, and that Israel will be attacking Iran again soon, but it will actually be a U.S. attack. They said Trump's recent portrayal of Netanyahu as kind of going rogue is a ruse, and that the U.S. will use Israel as its proxy to attack Iran. And Iran, we know Iran has been readying for war. So would you comment on this? And I'll put the 2 podcasts in the chat.
Thank you.
Thank you.
Well, I didn't, if I said it in a different way, I apologize. I stand corrected. But my idea about Russia entering Ukraine was a question of a transformation of a passive resistance to an active resistance.
Wait, Russia entering or Israel? Because
Russia entering Ukraine.
Ukraine, sorry. Okay.
In 22 but it was in response to the coup in 2014. Actually, NATO taking over the central government and pushing further, right, into eastern Ukraine. And that was a response. I think it was not just against the Ukrainian government for that, or just the protection. It was also for the protection of Russia against NATO too. So it was I think, a mixed mission. And one cannot be separated from the other, I think.
And
and the scenario, well, we all know that they are trying to There are lots of myths about Israel-US relations. You know, some have the theory of the dog's tail is wagging the dog, and another, you know, Israeli lobby doing everything and all that. But let's look at it as it is. Israel is the military base of United States in West Asia. That's what it is. And it has a particular historical mission to do it. And it doesn't matter if Netanyahu attacks or the US directly attacks, it's all US attack, to me. And it's imperialism doing it. Has a lot of arms and hands and can do it with anyone it chooses. So that's one single system with elements. Israel is one of them. And that's how I look at it personally.
Okay, and then next up is Richard Wright, followed by Lucy.
Yeah, thank you. I just basically wanted to comment a couple of things on Sharon's questioning about what drives Donald Trump, and I think partly it's Donald Trump lives in a world 200 years ago, back when, in fact, you did have nations vying against each other, as well as what's driving him now, I think, is basically, and back then, was the expropriation of resources. You know, one either for use back home and or to block them from countries, say like China. So I think that's what's driving him in large measure is that he's living in the past. My question is this: Iran way back when used to have a very strong communist, socialist, working class movements. How can you describe it? Is that still the case today, or has that been dissolved, or what's happened to that? Thank you very much.
Sure, I kind of hesitate to get into that, but as you know, the 2.5 years after the revolution, actually, the Iranian Communist Tudeh party was attacked, and its leadership were arrested, and later on, some tortured to death and some killed, executed. Since then, the party has been in exile, continuing in exile. Two levels of attack. One was that attack by the same liberals that are doing this to the Iran right now. It's the same class that is doing it. They did it then, they're doing it now. But unfortunately, the party leadership, after the attack and being sent to exile, took a position that was not in line with the original party position after the revolution. The party supported the party leadership supported the revolution, the line of Ayatollah Khamenei, and stayed loyal until the last minute. But the right wing knew the danger of closeness or of the lines of the party and the revolutionary Muslim leadership, and they tried to destroy it, and they did. But the thing is, the party outside, under, I would say, initially this emotional pressure of such an attack, took a position against the Islamic Republic and called for the overthrow of the Islamic Republic. And since then, they have been continuing. And there has been battles within the party over the continuation, whether the party should continue the line of post immediately after the revolution or should call for an overthrow. And this battle lasted for, I would say, about 2 decades. And they purged all the, I would say, Leninist wing of the party that still supported the revolution. And the party is now still opposed to the Islamic Republic and supports all the opposition and all that. So, but there are many comrades inside Iran who still believe in the original line of the party and are struggling alongside their Muslim brothers and sisters to protect the revolution. But they are not allowed to have an organization. So the idea is there, the forces are there, the organization is not there, but we are hoping and we think as the path of the revolution continues and it succeeds to eliminate the right-wing pro-West bourgeoisie in Iran or remove them from position of power that they have, I think things will change and there will be at some other point in the future, hopefully, the revival of the communist movement in the country.
Thank you, Bahman. And I think your video has gone off. I don't know if that was.
I'm sorry. Okay.
That's better. Okay. Okay. Thank you. So next up is Lucy, followed by Dev.
I am so sorry. I got the Baham. Thank you so much for your presentation. I was very impressed. It was very thorough and really well analyzed, in my opinion. The Middle East is so important in the fight against imperialism, and by all accounts, the U.S. is a paper tiger. We know that they are crumbling in front of our eyes, and the behavior of this guy in office that he is pushing a fascist form of control in here, it's very worrying. But we know that in the end they can't win. There's just no way. So there's the thing is though, what has caused this weakness in the Middle East? Do you think it's the oil, the presence of this very rich oil energy, the fight for that, you think, or is just simply the weakness is due to well, I mean, I can see the other states, the other Arab states seem to be silent about very much a lot of the conflict, especially in the genocide that is occurring, and we see that the fighters, the Houthis, and as the only the ones that are really the ones that are standing up and keeping that fight. I don't know what to say.
No, you're right. But the thing is, importance of Iran is not just for energy and resources and all that, but Iran has a strategic location now, especially on the road, Belt and Road project of China to the west, and also North-South corridor between Russia, Iran, and India. So these are two projects that are alternatives to the United States control. If you know, US is controlling the seas, in a sense, a marine trade. But China is coming with the project of creating trade through land
Right.
right? And Iran is at the core of that strategy, the strategic development. So in a sense, Iran acts as a kind of a window to Russia and a window to China from the east. So for that reason also, if they block Iran and remove it from that context,
Opposition, yeah.
they can block what China's plans are and what Russia's plans are. So that is another aspect of it. But of course, energy is also one, no question about it.
Thank you.
Okay, thank you. And then Dev, and then I'm going to call on myself.
Hi, Bahman. Thank you very much for your presentation. I have a very sort of fundamental question here, that what is the ultimate aim of the Iranian revolution, politically and economically, and what kind of mode of production economically it's pushing? And, and how is Iran's and rising middle class differs from the Iranian revolution's goal? So that
Oh. You put me on the spot. The objective of Iranian revolution. If you're looking at it from the economic point of view, of course, the revolution itself was an anti-imperialist and popular revolution. It sought independence for the country. That was the main objective. Also, social justice for the people and democracy. And these were slogans of the Iranian revolution. Freedom, independence, and justice. These were the three slogans of the revolution. The question of independence has been achieved in a sense. Politically, we know that. The question is economic side of this independence, independent side of the social justice. If you look at the constitution of the Islamic Republic of Iran, that was adopted, I think, by 99% vote. If I'm mistaking it for foundation of the Islamic Republic or constitution, I'm not so sure, but very high percentage. And the party and the left supported it. I'm sure you're familiar with the general strategy of the international communist movement in the 1960s. I think it was in the meeting, 1969 meeting of the parties, that they adopted for the countries like Iran and developing countries, a strategy of developing a non-capitalist development path, which meant control of major industries by the state, then a cooperative sector, and then a private sector, a multi-layer economic path. So this is enshrined in the Islamic Republic's constitution right now. It is there. They have not been able to revoke it. But with the beginning of Rafsanjani period after the war, the reconstruction of the war became an excuse for the Iranian bourgeoisie that had made tremendous amount of money in the war through black market and everything else, who had gained power and taken over the Iranian parliament and through Rafsanjani the presidency, okay, based the reconstruction of Iran after the war on what they called, what we know as the privatization of the economy. They thought that going with the World Bank and the International Monetary Fund would be the best way. That bourgeoisie had its own interest in it also, but they adopted that line to rebuild Iran. And adoption of that line meant further and further strengthening of big bourgeoisie in Iran, pro-West because this was based on the Western model. Extreme privatizations, which didn't exist even during the war, and increasing inequality, class division in society. So now we are dealing, after 40 years of this project, has been going on. Iran has had that dual character in a sense, right? From political point of view, ideological point of view, has been revolutionary, pro-independence of the country, anti-imperialist in orientation. But economically has been in the grip of this new liberal bourgeoisie that developed and emerged after the war, and it still is in the grip of that bourgeoisie. And the point is that in that process, a new layer of super rich people emerged that are a minority, but very powerful. And they are pro-West, whether you like it or not, pro-West, wholeheartedly. And this is the state, you know, the Iranian society is extremely polarized in this regard, economically and ideologically. Pro-West, anti-West, anti-imperialist, pro-West, pro-imperialist, and super rich versus majority of population in a bad economic condition. So this polarization is actually weakening Iran's ability to strengthen, to resist external adversaries. And we as progressives in the country, outside the country, think that the key to success in the struggle against the United States is to reverse that economic process inside the country. That's the only way.
Thank you.
Thank you. I'm going to call on myself, and then those of you who are familiar with our procedures here at the Marxist Forum is that we, Bahman, your visual just went off. You're back on again. I don't know if that was deliberate or not, but for those who are not familiar with our procedures, if you raise your hand and you haven't spoke, you go to the top of the stack, and if you've spoken before, you follow that stack. But my question would be a short one. In West Asia, there's Egypt. And it's a huge country, huge population. The imperialists obviously think it's very, very important. It's been exempt from the Trump economic war against the world. It's one of the largest recipients of U.S. aid and stuff like that. So it must be extremely important. It borders Gaza, yet we don't hear anything about Egypt. Where does that fit into this larger equation?
Well, first of all, let me make a kind of in parenthesis a comment about West Asia or Middle East issue. Egypt is not in West Asia. Egypt is in Africa. So that is my kind of undecidedness about calling it Middle East or West Asia, because the geographic perimeters are different between the two, in a sense. And when we talk about Middle East, we are including certain countries and excluding certain countries. And when we talk West Asia, it covers a particular region that is different a little bit. Not totally different, but a bit different. So, and if you look at it from historical background, I think more realistic to talk about Middle East if you're talking about one entity that has certain history, certain experience and all that. So anyway, that's in parentheses. But with regard to Egypt, I don't know, because there is a lot of also undecidedness about what Saudi Arabia will do. Because many countries that were in the camp of the West are more or less taking a not neutral, but kind of a more balanced positions. And Egypt, I think, is one of those undecided areas that we are dealing with. We have to wait and see, because Egypt was on the side of the revolution until Sadat had his revolution and I mean, coup d'etat and everything else, and moved Egypt in the opposite direction. And now Egypt is itself, I think it's in itself debating with itself as to what to do. So I'm not so sure unless somebody else has more concrete ideas about what is going on.
Thank you. Of course, the Sinai, I think, is in the Middle East. So, but in any case, going on, Farshid, followed by Norma. Thank you.
Bahman, when talk about the different incentive of United States and Iran regarding starting this negotiation, he will describe the incentive of United States and also Iran. I just wanted to add another reason why, apart from the supreme leader and the revolutionary part of the Iranian government, they know in advance what would be the result of this negotiation and it won't go anywhere. Why they enter through that? And in my point of view, a part of that is because they wanted to people in Iran, which was bombarded, as Bahman mentioned, by the Western media, and they think that everything, every shortcoming in Iran depends that we do not have the relationship with the West, and especially the United States. They experience by themselves how irrational and how illogic is United States, and even if Iran wanted to give some concession to United States, there is no way that we can reach to an agreement. And in front of us is the experience of the Russia as a negotiation with United States regarding the Ukraine. And we see that it didn't go anywhere. And actually Russia started himself and think about a prolonged war that would be continued, even if it might be some stoppage, some ceasefire in the middle, but it's gonna be just temporary and not in the long run. So basically, and I wanted to add, in case that there would be any limited attack of Israeli, there is another risk that they should consider, that it will bring up the issue of the nationalistic sentiment through Iranian masses, and it will fire back. So a lot of people right now are criticizing the government. At that time would be in backing the government, the way that we saw that, as our friend says, Navida says, in case of the Iraq.
30 seconds.
Yeah, I'm done. Thanks.
You don't expect an answer from me. I agree.
Okay. Very, very good. Okay. Next up is from hands I can see, Citizen and then Polina. So Citizen, if you could unmute.
Oh, thank you. I didn't realize you were calling on me. Thank you very much. I just want to first say that I consider what I engage in during Q&A as just an exchange of ideas and not any disrespect from me. So in my attempt to be correct, I'm sorry, in my attempt to be concise, I just don't want anyone to misconstrue that. I also want to say that, you know, the idea that Israel's the military base of the US in West Asia, many listeners here are probably tired of me disagreeing with that. But Bahman, I invite you to read my commentary, which many here have heard before, The Left and the Israel Lobby by me, Joseph Anderson, Berkeley, at dissidentvoice.org. So again, Bahman and anyone else, The Left and the Israel Lobby at dissidentvoice.org. I also want to say, you know, Phyllis Venice said that the only people actually pushing for a US war against Iran is Israel. And I think that should be our most important awareness in considering this issue, that Israel and the Zionist lobby is trying to drag the US into another Muslim world oil. I personally think that Iran, like North Korea, should develop nuclear weapons. I think when North Korea developed nuclear weapons, it stabilized the Korean Peninsula. And there's the old joke, how did the US know that Iraq didn't have nuclear weapons, but North Korea did. The US attacked Iraq, but didn't attack North Korea. I just want to say
30
that,
seconds.
oh, thank you very much.
Seconds.
Thank you very much. I really appreciated what Naveed Anthony said. And this prompts a question on my part, what Bahman, you may have partially answered. So there's not going to be a color revolution in Iran, or do you think there is going to be what I'll call a color revolution in Iran? My understanding from a recent reporter is that the hijab and the scarf requirements have been very much relaxed in Iran. And I believe that that is an attempt to at least eliminate one aspect of domestic discord. And lastly, I'll say the Shah also nationalized oil, also nationalized Iranian oil, and every non-European country, and sometimes Britain, have nationalized all of their oil. No self-respecting oil country in the Middle East has not nationalized their oil. Thank you very much.
Did you say Shah nationalized Iranian oil?
Yes, he did.
No, he didn't.
He did. Okay, well, we can all look that up, but I say he did.
He unnationalized it.
Well, he renationalized it, but we can all look that up. I don't want to dwell on. I could be wrong, and we can all look that up, and I can look it up and verify it too.
But when you say Iran should have nuclear weapon,
do you think there's going to be a color revolution in Iran, especially based on what?
Not in that sense that you had it in Eastern Europe. No, I don't think so. No color revolution of that nature, but the style of the Syrian partitioning, I see possible. That is in the works for them. Whether they succeed or not is a different story. But that would be the model, not a color revolution of the Eastern European type, because they don't have the base for that. They don't. But they can create problems like they did in Kurdish Syria, partitioning of the very Sunni, whatever, different divisions. They are working on that right now. So for possible option 2 or 3 or whatever. But regarding the nuclear weapons, I think there's a wiser approach to the question of nuclear weapon. Instead of Iran making weapons, Iran should call for a nuclear-free zone in the Middle East and push for that. Let's see how the US responds. Okay, I think that's the right way to go. Thank you.
I just want to say, I just looked it up and I got an answer, at least from Google for what it's worth. Yes, Mohammad Reza Pahlavi, also known as the Shah of Iran, did nationalize the Iranian oil industry in 1973. This move gave Iran full control over its oil resources and operations. Thank you.
I'm so sorry. I have to disagree with you strongly. Was a puppet of especially American imperialism, and it was Mossadegh who nationalized the oil industry. I'm so sorry. It's however, later on, in some years later, because of the oil cartel, the Seven Sisters didn't want to have any sort of I don't know, a sort of ability or sort of liability to the oil workers. They said, okay, you nationalize it, even the most puppets countries of the world, because the oil cartels did not want the liabilities. So they said, all the we just want the assets, the governments have the liabilities. Thank you very much.
Naveed, if I may ask you, and excuse me for Paulina, Naveed, is it true that the requirement for hijabs and scarves have been greatly relaxed in Iran? One reporter said when she was last there, she could see as many women not wearing hijabs and scarves as did. Thank you.
Well, I'm not in Iran, but I've heard that when in fact, I was in Iran last year. My friend, who basically came from America, she was wearing nothing, no scarf or anything, and nobody stopped her. Of course, she was wearing a Palestinian kafia, so maybe they let go of that one. So she was forgiven, but yeah, for respect, I wore my sort of scarf. Yeah, it has.
And I would like to add to Navida's comment. When you can call it nationalization by the Shah, the only condition for it if the government itself is nationalized too. If it is an agent of Western imperialism in the country controlling the oil, you remember like Saudis who had $110 billion worth of contracts of military arms with the United States. That is the oil money, where oil money went during the Shah's time. So let's not forget that. It was nationalized, means at the service of the nation, not at the service of imperialism.
Okay, I think we have two more questions, and we're just about coming to the end of our program time. So I'm going to call on Paulina, followed by Judith.
Thank you. Bahman is a historian of somebody who studied and written about the destruction of the Soviet Union. And I understand that we're talking about very different models economically, but is there anything that the revolutionary part of the government in Iran can learn as far as bad mistakes that they could learn from, from the history of the fall of the Soviet Union in terms of the pro-Western influence or anything like that? Or am I stretching this too far?
Well, I don't see any parallels that can be linked with each other in that direction. But if you're talking about present Iranian government and its policies, I wouldn't go in a negative way in terms of what they should not do, but because they have done a lot of things they shouldn't have done. But what they should do, in my view, is that they should try to understand the Chinese model and try to implement it in Iran. That is, control existence of the private sector, very powerful, under the direction of the state. And if they can do it, and the orientation of the country's industry toward the whole national interest rather than private sector interests, if they can do that, this is something that China has done, I think they will save the revolution.
Okay. Did you want to follow up, Paulina?
No, I like that answer. Thank you.
Very good. Okay. And now Judith, it's all yours.
Yeah. Okay. So I think Bahman, that you're taking Trump at his word, that he wants America first, and I think that statement is belied by his actions. If he wanted to bring industry back to America, he would immediately start to improve the education system. He would not kick out foreign PhDs. He would improve the infrastructure. He would do any number of things to improve the conditions inside America, and he isn't doing any of that. And I think I kind of go along with Brian Berletic's analysis, even though he is not a Marxist, but he sees all of the Trump administration's actions, and in my opinion, most of the ruling class is behind Trump. That this is aimed at squashing China, as China, rather than raise the United States, they prefer to vitiate China to squash it, make it less of an effective rival, and part of this plan entails weakening Iran, because Iran not only supplies oil to China, but the area that Iran sits on is like the sea lanes to China, and I
Two
also
minutes.
okay. I also think that the hostilities between Pakistan and India is also a result of the United States riling up the terrorists in Kashmir. Okay, thank you.
Thank you, Azad. I agree with you that I'm not taking Trump for his words. In fact, we should not forget that it was the massive discontent with the U.S. ruling class that brought Trump to power. He is riding that wave, and he has to give slogans that organizes those people behind him. Making America first is for public consumption. What he is doing, in fact, is creating a crony capitalism. He's after his own. He wants to make hotels in Gaza. That's the plan. It's fun.
Okay. Norma.
The same way Nixon was fighting for peace in Vietnam,
Yeah, absolutely correct. Norma, you have the last word there.
Thank you. Hello, everybody. Hello, Bahman. It's a
Hello.
pleasure.
For me too.
Yes. I didn't hear you.
I said here too.
Oh, good. Thank you. Thank you. My hearing, the revenge against me. I'm sitting here moaning. It's kind of irrelevant in a way. I was going to say the way that the United States is brutalizing its population. I'm just completing last Sunday's newspaper. I don't have time to read a whole week's paper. Last Sunday's newspaper had an article about reinstituting the debt collection on students. Just a horrible, horrible report. It's so out of possibility. I mean, people can't pay the rents. People are stacking themselves by enormous crowding in their place to live in order to be able to pay the rents. And I know it's not only America. I know it's throughout the world. There's no escape from the profiteers. But the combination, the terrible insult to the population, I think these have an effect on the behavior. When you bring a whole country together under a god and a church, a religious mechanism, that kind of, I guess, performs some kind of unity, especially if they're taking off the hijab. But here we don't have a single unifying force, and we have some communists too. Well, and I was trying to make some comparison, but it turns out that the people in Iran have their communists, which has really got to be driving the leadership crazy.
2 minutes.
Thank you.
Okay, well,
You get it. I'm suffering.
Thank you very much.
I'm suffering is why this thing, the article about the debt is just horrendous.
I think thank you, Norma. And then Bahman, would you care to make some final statements for us, and particularly something to do with what as activists and U.S. citizens we should be thinking about in terms of the issues that you raised today?
About the issues?
Yes, in terms of where we should carry those thoughts forward in terms of activism and support for the progressive forces. I know that you've been very involved in those issues and as an activist, and maybe bring some of that home to us.
Yeah, but the only thing that I could say, which I'm sure all of us here share, is that the movement in the United States should take an anti-imperialist orientation, understand the nature of imperialism, and act upon that rather than focusing on this administration, that administration, this party, that party, this government, that government, or individuals even nowadays. So we should understand that all of these things are linked together. Domestic issues with the international issues, war with economic condition, all of these things are linked, and they are all attributed to one single system of exploitation and oppression. And if we can understand that and go beyond the facade of individuals and parties and organizations and think that this and that leader or this and that group can save us, only people can save themselves and save the country, and that's the only way, and especially the working people of this country, and that has to be kept in mind, and that's my view on that.
Thank you very much, Bahman, for joining us, comrade. It's always a pleasure to have you at the Marxist Forum. Your insights are just invaluable, and thank you everybody else for participating. There was some really insightful and good comments and questions, and I hope to see everybody next week. And we can end recording now. Thank you.
Thank you, Roger. I was honored to be here.
Institute for the Critical Study of Society at the Niebuhr Proctor Marxist Library receives no corporate funding, nor do we have any paid staff. We rely on the support of working class folks that share our commitment to the socialist legacy of Karl Marx. We continue to need funds to meet necessary expenses. Since we can no longer pass the hat at our in-person forums, please send contributions to our treasurer, either online via PayPal or by check. The PayPal ID is ICSS Sunday, SUNDAY, @yahoo.com, and the name is Richard Fallenbaum. And checks may be made out to Richard Fallenbaum and sent to him at 1225 Nielsen Street, Berkeley, California, 94706. Fallenbaum is spelled Fallenbaum. To donate directly to the Marxist Library, send a check to the Niebuhr Proctor Marxist Library at 6501 Telegraph Avenue, Oakland, California, 94609, or directly or donate online at www.paypal.me/npml. For information, write to npml at marxistlibr.org, and the website is marxistlibr.org.